The PlayStation 3 makes my life as a software developer much harder. All of a sudden I'm supposed to figure out how to have this asymmetrical, multi-threaded game, right? And I've never written a single line of multi-threaded code ever.
Do you really know the true power of the PS3 Cell Processor? And was the endeavor a success or a failure? Let's find out. The PlayStation 3, launched in 2006, was a groundbreaking console in many ways, but what truly set it apart was its unique cell processor. Developed by a powerhouse trio of companies, Sony, Toshiba, and IBM, the cell processor was designed to push the boundaries of computing power and graphics performance. 13 years after the console's release, Michiel van der Loo, co-director and technical director of Guerrilla Games, claims the Cell is still in a class by itself. In an interview with Game Informer celebrating the brand's 25th anniversary, van der Loo had some interesting thoughts to share. Even desktop chips nowadays, the fastest Intel stuff you can buy, is not by far as powerful as the Cell CPU, but it's very difficult to get power out of the Cell. I think it was ahead of its age, because it was a little bit more like how GPUs work nowadays, but it was maybe not balanced nicely, and it was too hard to use. It overshot a little bit in power and undershot in usability, but it was definitely visionary. So, what makes the Cell Processor so special? Let's break it down. The Cell Processor is a multi-core chip consisting of one power processing element, or PPE, and 8 synergistic processing elements, or SPEs. The PPE is responsible for general-purpose tasks, while the SPEs handle more specialized, intensive computations. This architecture was quite advanced for its time and allowed the PS3 to deliver stunning graphics and complex simulations. In terms of specs, the Cell Processor runs at 3.2 GHz and delivers performance far superior to many of its contemporaries. When compared to the CPUs in the Xbox 360 and high-end PCs of that era, the Cell Processor was in a league of its own. A Cell system running all 8 SPEs, PS3 developers had access to 6, with a 7th reserved for the system and the 8th disabled, and fully optimized code was literally an order of magnitude more capable than its contemporaries. It is undoubtedly true that a Cell Processor running optimized code over all 8 SPEs can match many contemporary desktop CPUs under certain conditions and for specific tasks. Although the processor was undoubtedly a powerhouse at the time, its unusual architecture gave developers a lot of trouble. The Cell Processor's architecture was radically different from the conventional processors used in other gaming consoles and PCs at the time. It consisted of a single power processing element, PPE, and 8 synergistic processing elements, SPEs. This heterogeneous multi-core setup required developers to distribute tasks between the PPE and SPEs, which was a complex and unfamiliar process for many. At the time of the PS3's launch, the development tools and resources for the Cell Processor were not as mature or comprehensive as those for more traditional processors. This lack of robust development environments, debugging tools, and documentation made it harder for developers to learn and efficiently program for the Cell Processor. The Xbox 360 had a more conventional and familiar architecture with 3 symmetrical cores than its rival. This made it easier for developers to create and optimize games, resulting in better performance and more consistent graphical quality across titles. The PS3's GPU, the NVIDIA RSX, was based on the NVIDIA GeForce 7800 architecture. While powerful, it had to work in tandem with the Cell Processor for optimal performance, adding to the complexity. On the other hand, Xbox 360 used the ATI Xenos GPU, which had an innovative unified shader architecture and was considered more efficient and easier to optimize for games. Despite these challenges, some developers were able to create stunning and highly optimized games that showcased the capabilities of the Cell Processor. Titles like Uncharted 2, Among Thieves, and The Last of Us are often cited as examples of games that pushed the PS3 to its limits. However, the difficulty of developing for the Cell Processor also led to some games being less optimized or delayed. These issues prevented the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 from utilizing the PlayStation 3's Cell Processor. For the PS4 and PS5, Sony chose to use x86-64 architecture, which is the same architecture used in most personal computers. This architecture is more familiar to developers and has a more straightforward programming model. It allows developers to more easily port games between consoles and PCs, reducing development costs and time. The x86-64 architecture also simplifies the learning curve for new developers entering the PlayStation ecosystem. One of the issues with the Cell processor was the difficulty in achieving backward compatibility with future hardware. By switching to a more conventional x86-64 architecture, Sony could better ensure backward compatibility with previous PlayStation titles. This was evident with the PS5's ability to run a significant number of PS4 games without the need for extensive reworking of the original game code. The decision to move away from the Cell processor in the PS4 and PS5 was driven by the need to make development more accessible and cost-effective, to improve backward compatibility, and to take advantage of the latest advancements in CPU and GPU technology. This strategic shift helped Sony provide a better overall experience for both developers and gamers, contributing to the success of the PS4 and PS5 consoles. While the PlayStation 3 faced significant challenges at launch due to its high price, complex architecture, and initial lack of games, it eventually turned around thanks to strategic price cuts, strong exclusive titles, and improvements in its online services. By the end of its life cycle, the PS3 was considered a success, helping to solidify Sony's reputation in the gaming industry and paving the way for the more developer-friendly and commercially successful PlayStation 4. By far the least successful of the four home consoles, the PS3 is the only PlayStation not to sell over 100 million units. However, the console is still held in high regard technologically. In summary, the PS3's Cell processor was difficult to utilize due to its complex and unconventional architecture, the challenges of parallel processing, memory management issues, and the steep learning curve for developers. While it ultimately allowed for some incredible gaming experiences, the development hurdles it presented were significant and shaped the approach to game development for the PS3. Thanks for joining me on this journey through tech history. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world of technology and gaming. See you next time.